Good morning, everybody. It again is our Wednesday morning chamber chat. Oh, by the way, before I forget, and I will forget if I don't tell you right now, we have a special chamber chat this week, in addition to our normal programming on Friday. And let me see, 15th, 16th, 17th, on the 17th of September. I had the opportunity, some of our staff did, Brian Rodnick, who's on our communications person as well. We had a briefing from the Ministry of Economic Development and the Ministry of Health on the vaccine certification program being rolled out and implemented on September the 22nd. So we want to take an opportunity for anybody who's interested to come and hear more about that. Some of the, maybe we can, hopefully we can answer some of your questions. I don't know whether they're going to be opinionated answers or whether they're going to be factual answers, but we'll deal with that when we get them. But we'll go through some of the rules and regulations, and we can talk about some of the challenges that you maybe see you're going to have, so that we can then convey them to the provincial government and hopefully get some of your concerns addressed so that the implementation of the program is of value to businesses. That's the most important thing. So that is Friday on the 17th from 2 to 3 in the afternoon. Real special reason why we're doing 2 to 3 in the afternoon. Most of the affected businesses are going to be in the hospitality. Hopefully they're really busy between 12 and 2. And so we're putting it to 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock to allow them the opportunity to tune in as well. So this Friday, 2 to 3, chamber chat. I think Melissa or Lisa, either one of you can tell me. I think the email is going out very shortly with respects to registering for that as well. Thanks very much for joining us for our last candidates forum. Today we have the candidates who responded to our invitation to come from Kitchener South-Hespeler. We did not get all of our candidates to agree to come, which is very disappointing to me. Quite frankly, I think all candidates should understand clearly that whether you like the Chamber of Commerce or whether you don't like the Chamber of Commerce, whether you believe in what we do or you don't believe in what we do, I can tell you the Chamber of Commerce in every single community across the country has a tremendous amount of influence. So whether you like us or not, you certainly want to know what we're up to, and you want to communicate with us because we can be that influential organization to help you, but also to help businesses along the way. I also want to make a quick comment on some of the things that have happened along the campaign trail. We see candidates of all stripes, by the way, being protested at and chased down and stuff being thrown at them and all kinds of goofy things happening. That is reminiscent of an uncivil society. We live in a civil society. We are going to have differences. We are going to disagree. Every single opinion needs to be respected because everyone is entitled in a democracy to have their own opinions. And thank God we do. Because at the end of the day, when we all have different opinions and we come to the table and debate like adults and responsible individuals, we generally come out with resolutions and legislation that fit the mold of our society. And so we reject completely, and we hope every single candidate rejects completely some of the things that have happened along the way. It's just not Canadian-like, and it's certainly not Waterloo Region-like, that is for sure. I want to introduce to you our my board members that are going to be asking questions today. I have 3 board members with me today asking questions of the 3 candidates that are here. Kristen Danson, she is from Mito Graphics and Swift Components. She is actually the incoming chair. She'll be taking over from Darren Droulard next June. And we're very excited to have her leadership at the Chamber. And she's been a strong supporter of business as well. Also, Peter Voss. Peter Voss is the president and CEO of Shimco. He's in the aerospace industry. He keeps you in the air when you're flying from wherever you want to go. You don't even see or feel his products, but trust me, if they aren't there and they aren't doing their job, you're going to have nothing to complain about because you're probably not going to get there. But Peter is a very interesting fellow, has a great business right here in town, and we're so proud and pleased to have Shimco and Peter Voss's leadership around the chamber table, that's for sure. And then Prakash Venkataraman, he is, everybody knows Prakash. He is a Politico from way back. He is a businessman. He has owned oil and gas companies. He has now in the development space, doing projects of condominiums and apartment buildings all over southwestern Ontario. And once again, to have his expertise, leadership, and experience on our board is critically important. Now I want to introduce the only candidates that took the time to show up for this debate for Kitchener South-Hespeler. And from my perspective, they're the ones the chamber should be interested in because they're the only ones you're going to hear from our perspective. We have Valerie Bradford. She is the Liberal candidate. Valerie, good morning. Thank you very much.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
We have Suresh Rangat. He is the new Democratic candidate. Thank you very much, Suresh, for coming and taking the time to spend with us this morning.
Thanks, Craig, for calling me and giving me this opportunity.
And from the People's Party of Canada, we have Melissa Baumgartner. Thank you very much for coming, taking time out of your busy schedule to be here as well. Thank you, Melissa.
It's my pleasure.
Okay, let's get right into it. We're going to have the first question is going to come from my friend Prakash. You have 2 minutes to answer your question. We'll start off with Melissa, then go to Suresh and Valerie, and then we'll reverse the order after that.
Okay. This seat just got hot.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Greg. Thank you to each one of you candidates. And it's not easy to put your name up. And thank you for everything you guys do. So my first question is about the economy. The last economy over the past 18 months will take a decade to recover from, but only if the predictions are correct. And that as we emerge from COVID-19, pandemic, consumer confidence will be high and the economy will be robust. However, it appears a parallel pandemic has blossomed out of this. There are 2 million Canadians still collecting Canada Recovery Benefit Plan, and there are millions more jobs available. The excuse of wage levels cannot be used as we see virtually every frontline service employer increasing their wage offerings well above minimum wage. But this is still not attracting those collecting government subsidy to return to work. What will your party do immediately to get Canadians back to work so our economy can in fact grow and recover? Recovery can commence right away. What is your party plan and what will you do? Thank you.
Melissa.
Hey, yes, thank you. First of all, what we do plan to do is phase out all of the COVID spending programs and reverse new spending programs that have been announced by the current government. We do want to get rid of the deficit by the end of the first mandate. So we will cut corporate welfare as well, and foreign development aid, CBC, equalization payments, and funding for programs which are provincial or municipal responsibilities. So we also want to get to the point where after the first mandate, we can cut taxes so that people will have an opportunity to spend more money on using your businesses. So, you know, I think that we need to give people incentives to not be sitting on these government handouts. I mean, I understand that, time and place and need and everything. I totally get it. This has been a very unprecedented situation, but we do need to get Canadians back to work. It would be nice to see businesses not struggling with finding employees right now. We need to get rid of the COVID spending programs and get people back to work. There are jobs and we're ready. We know that we're equipped to get people back to work with where things are right now regarding the pandemic. So I think it's time for us to be looking at things from a realistic perspective and take measured steps towards doing that so we can get our economy back up and running again.
Thanks, Melissa. Suresh.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. I always dreamt of sitting in front of you and answering questions. So I used to watch all of your interviews, and I was thinking, oh, when will that day come? I sit in front of this person and answer his question. And thank you very much for giving me that opportunity, Craig. And see, the question which I was asked is about the 2 million, the millions of people who don't have a job. Yes, they don't have a job, and the federal government has been supporting them with the CERB, the CEWS, and the rehiring programs. But the major issue which we are finding at this point is not only the lack of jobs, shortage of talent, shortage of labor. That's a major issue the businesses are facing at this point. And why is this happening? There are various factors. One of the major factors is during the pandemic, because they didn't have job, they moved into different jobs. For example, the people who are working in Cambridge, maybe they have moved into the IT sector or the software sector, and they're not planning to come back, maybe because of the wages, or they don't want to come back into a different job. So that is the first thing about the shortage of the talents in there. Other major thing is affordable housing. The people have to work, people need houses to live. And if they want to spend money, they have something left after paying the rent or the mortgage. So that's a major issue. And what will happen now, people will be moving out of our region to other regions where they can have affordable houses, or they can pay, they have something left after paying the rent or the mortgage. So that's the two major issues we are. I don't think there's any shortage of orders for the businesses to start with now, because we know during this period, the big companies like Amazon and, they all made billions and billions of dollars in the profit. So that means people are still buying. And we should remember, we didn't pass through a recession. We passed through a forced recession, or I would say, because of the pandemic, the businesses were closed because that is more dangerous for them to run. So basically, we have to understand there is a shortage of talent. Coming to the other thing, small businesses have been surviving.
You've actually had your 2 minutes, Suresh.
I'm sorry?
You've actually had your 2 minutes, and thanks very much. And in spite of the fact that you dreamt about meeting with me, and I'd love for you to go on and on and on to talk about that, we have to cut you off at some point.
No problem. Thank you.
Valerie.
Yes. So basically, I firmly believe that Canadians want to work. When you think of it, so much of your self-worth revolves around what you do. When you first meet someone, you ask their name, and then you say, what do you do? So Canadians identify very much their character with what they are doing for a living. What COVID has done is made a lot of people rethink their priorities and what they want to do. And I think what we're seeing is a great career shift going on, because people realize it's not just about the money, it's about work-life balances. And I think all of us have rethought our priorities as to what's really important in life. And it's not just necessarily what we earn. So I think there's going to be a great need for retraining of our workforce to help people transition to the careers of the future. My work with the Workforce Planning Board has identified a lot of training opportunities, and we worked with reskilling people that lost their current positions for whatever reason and needed to transition to the jobs of the future. And there's a great role for government to play in that, to support people as they make that shift. Another thing is people have to be able to afford to work. And you might say that's an odd thing, but we have the highest childcare costs in the world. Here in Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge, we're classified as a daycare desert, meaning we don't have enough spaces. And that's why it's so hard to find a space, and that's why it's so expensive. People are paying up to $2,000 a month for a toddler. So that precludes many people, primarily in this case women, from re-entering the workforce because they can't afford to pay the price of a mortgage payment for their toddler care. So that's why the Liberal Party's $10 a day childcare program, which equates to $200 a month, will be so valuable in helping bring more people to the workforce. You know, almost 40% more people will be eligible when you think of women of childbearing age. And that will boost the economy and make more workforce available. For every dollar that the government invests in childcare, the economy is boosted by $2.50. So that's unlike any other government spending program that I can think of. So, and we're going to continue the Canadian Recovery Hiring Program. It will continue until March 31st so that businesses can hire more workers and get more Canadians back to work.
Okay, thank you very much, Valerie. That's awesome. I'm going to turn it over to Peter for a question, but I don't know whether he's ready. If he's ready for the question, if not, we'll go to Kristen. Let's go to Kristen.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks to the candidates for being here. It's great to hear from you. I've been looking forward to this all week. The polling is out. The number one concern Canadians have is healthcare, and the very close number two is the economy. Of course, we enjoy, appreciate, and applaud our universal healthcare system, in spite of it being a ration system, meaning we get what we need, not necessarily what we want. We know with certainty that our system is flawed. We saw the glimmer of issues at the beginning of the pandemic with PPE. Now, in wave 4, doctors are praying they have enough pediatric ventilators, as children are now the vulnerable. We actually rank 9th out of 11 countries, just above France and United States. We cannot tax ourselves into prosperity and better healthcare. So how do we ensure we have the best healthcare and best economy we can? Thank you.
Suresh.
Yeah. Thanks, Kristen, for the question. Yes, pharmacare is a problem in our country, like prescription drug coverage. I think it is there, for more years than, we can even think about. And liberals have always promised that, they will bring the pharmacare into our universal healthcare system. And it's like 25 years or 27 years has passed. And even now, they are not doing anything. Now, one of the major things which I feel the pharmacare is not coming into our universal healthcare is because of the pharmaceutical companies. Like, I have looked into some statistics and which I have found that we are spending billions of dollars in buying the prescription drugs for our hospitals, which is always in the public sector. The government is spending like $2 billion for covering the private healthcare for the federal employees. Small businesses are spending almost $8 billion for providing the coverage, which if the government takes it over, maybe that could be done in $1 billion. So all these things is point why the government, in spite of all this positive thinking, like you can save $2 billion from the federal private coverage, the businesses can save billions of dollars, and we can negotiate better prices for buying our drugs because we have the huge buying power. In spite of all this, and Mr. Trudeau offered the pharmacare in 2019, and then he backed out. I don't know what happened, right? So that shows that there is a big influence of the pharmaceutical companies to prevent us from this pharmacare coming into our system. We have calculated that it will save like $500 per employee, per person, if the pharmacare come into the picture. There is a very big issue facing our region now. That is the mental health care. People are dying of addictions, and people are. So are you saying that I should stop now?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that we should bring the pharmacare, the dental care, and the mental health care. That is NDP's plan this time. And we have ways of doing it. We'll be increasing the capital gains, and we'll be increasing the taxation, which affects only the ultra rich, not even the rich people living in the country.
Okay. Thank you, Suresh. Valerie.
First of all, I want to thank all the doctors, nurses, and frontline workers that have dedicated their lives to helping us through COVID. They have been operating through tremendous stress for 18 months now, and we owe them a great debt of gratitude. Now, our universal healthcare system is one of the best in the world, and it's the envy of many, many countries. And we need to protect it at all costs. And I want to say, from a business perspective, it makes our businesses extremely competitive. My work with the city of Kitchener in economic development was trying to attract businesses to our region. And one of our prime selling points was that we had this universal healthcare program. So the companies don't have to provide healthcare coverage at great expense to their employees. So it's made our businesses extremely competitive. Now, that doesn't mean that it's without problems. And we all know what they are. And they've been exacerbated because of COVID, because we had to put a lot of procedures on hold that were very necessary, but we had to free up beds in the ICU to deal with COVID. So to relieve the pressure on our local healthcare teams, a Liberal government will provide support to hire 7,500 doctors and nurses dealing with the backlog of less urgent procedures. I think we all saw, to our horror, the situation in our long-term care homes. It was quite horrifying to see how bad the situation was. When the federal government has to bring in our military to feed people in long-term care homes to cover up for the shortages of staffing, we have a serious crisis. So we obviously need some national standards for long-term care homes. And we're going to work with the provinces to do that, so that if you're in a long-term care facility in Charlottetown, Yellowknife, or Victoria, you can expect the same level of care. We're going to work to hire 50,000 PSWs and train them so that we can address this shortage of PSWs and raise their wages to $25 an hour to reflect the value of the work that they do, taking care of our most vulnerable. And we're going to fund publicly accessible mental health care. COVID has been so stressful for everybody, the entire age continuum, from our children right through to our most seniors. It's been horrible. It's been isolating, and we have paid a price with our mental health. We're going to create 10 paid sick days for federally regulated workers.
Thanks, Valerie. That's your 2 minutes. Melissa.
There we go. I caught it that time. So I guess we have a pretty different approach. I think we're about having provinces take responsibility for spending instead of continuing to throw a lot of money at the problems, helping poorer provinces out where they need help. And we do want to replace the Canada Health Transfer cash payments with a permanent transfer of tax points of equivalent value to the provinces and territories, to give them a stable source of revenue. And in practice, Ottawa will give up its goods and services tax and let provincial and territorial governments occupy this fiscal room. So, I mean, I think that responsible spending by the provinces is something that we want to make sure is happening. And we want to give incentives to provinces to implement programs and take steps fiscally to make the choices that are going to be best for their systems within each province. And we will establish a temporary program to compensate the poorer provinces whose revenues from the tax will be lower than the transfer payments they used to receive. And we do want to create the conditions to help provincial and territorial governments innovate. They will be fully responsible for their healthcare funding and management, and fully accountable to their citizens for the results, while Ottawa will respect the Constitution and stop meddling. I don't think throwing money at the problem is a solution that's been working. And I think that it's important for provinces to take some more responsibility towards distributing funds appropriately and ensuring that they're being spent well. I know COVID has been an entirely different ballgame for everybody, and the whole country, the whole world's gone through this. So of course, you know, we have to be cognizant of that and make sure as we move forward that we're taking the steps to be mindful. We do need to remember that, you know, the money has to come from somewhere, and be responsible in how we're distributing that. And the provinces do need to take responsibility for what they're doing with it once they receive it. So we do need to take some different steps than we have been taking.
Thanks, Melissa. Okay, next question coming from Peter Voss. Peter.
Good morning. We all know that the federal deficit has ballooned, beyond anybody's imagination. It was getting bad before the pandemic happened, and now it's in the trillions. It's going to be over $1 trillion by the time this is done. And and people are worried about their their investments and their future, how we're going to be taxed going forward, and how that's going to happen. And I think we've all heard that the Liberals have a plan or potential plan to tax the sale of private residence. And that is typically one of the biggest investments that people have that own homes. So I'm wondering, what is the plan to prevent people losing the value in their homes? And what are the plans to help people buy a new home that doesn't affect the general taxpayer? That why it's a bit of a thought. Why should everybody have to pay other people to be able to afford a home? So I just want to understand what are the policies there.
And we'll start with Valerie.
Okay, thank you for that question. First of all, I want to put to rest the rumor, and this is, all the time people talk about, oh, the Liberals are going to tax capital gains on their principal residence. There is no plan to do that. And this is just a rumor and fear mongering that is dragged out all the time, particularly election time. So that is not in the works. And we do appreciate that housing is certainly a concern, the affordability of housing. And we have concrete plans to address that. And it doesn't affect the taxpayer. It's not going to be at the cost of the taxpayer. We're proposing to establish a new account that people can contribute up to $40,000 in investments tax-free, so that your investments will grow quicker. We're going to get rid of these blind bidding wars that are going on with houses right now that are really escalating the price of homes. We should have open, clear bidding like they do in Australia, so you know what's on the table, what you're competing against. We're going to have a rent-to-own program to make the first purchase easier. And, all of these things will definitely help, and they won't be at any cost to the taxpayer. We're going to increase the housing supply by building and retrofitting 1.4 million new homes. Housing is expensive because we don't have enough of it. It's the same with everything, supply and demand. And Waterloo has been chosen for the Rapid Housing Initiative, which guarantees that from the time housing is approved and shovels in the ground, there will be housing available to move in within a year. And this will really help us deal with our homeless crisis, because we have to take care of people that have no homes at all. And there'll be more support for veterans housing as well. So all of these things will help address the cost of housing. We're also going to ban foreign investment ownership in housing for at least 2 years while we have a look at how that works, because that has really inflated the price of our homes. Canadian housing seems expensive to us, but on a world basis, it's still a bargain. So people want to invest in our homes because they know they're going to get a good return on investment because of the appreciation. So all of these things will help, and it won't be a cost to the taxpayer. What we're aiming for is stability in the market, stable housing prices that keep pace with inflation, that don't go wild and out of control. That's what has happened during COVID. It's been exacerbated during the last 18 months as people discover our wonderful region and the quality of life they can have here at far less expense than in the GTA.
Thank you. Melissa.
All right, here we go.
Lucky I have this little thing, isn't it?
This thing is fantastic. I love it. Okay, so I think that one of the biggest things that we are really looking to implement is fiscal responsibility. I think that we are again headed towards, I believe it's $1.2 trillion worth of debt. And when you break that down, where all Canadians are concerned, that saddles each of us with well over $30,000 worth of debt. So what that translates to is a very rough go at things to come in the future, especially for young people right now, for kids and young people right now who would like to buy their first homes. In the last 6 years or so, I would say, because I'm thinking about the times I was in the housing market personally, we've watched the price of a house double or more than double. This is not a sustainable trend in the short or the long term. So basically, what we plan to do, we have a few plans to obviously work on a few things financially, but we want to modify the Bank of Canada's inflation target from 2 to 0% to cool down inflation in all sectors, including housing. We want to work with the provinces to curb speculation and money laundering by foreign non-resident buyers in Canada's land and housing markets. We need to, we have a certain cost of living and a certain wage expectation in this region, for example, throughout the country, but in this region. And we need to be focused on making things affordable for the people who live here. When you see the trends that have been going on for the past 6 years, that is completely non-sustainable. And it's put home ownership out of reach for a lot of Canadians, for a lot of people in Waterloo region, and it's done so very rapidly. So we want to make sure that we're lowering the cost of living and cooling down the inflation. This is going to be one of the ways in which we're going to put money back in the pockets of Canadians. And we have to understand that when we talk about implementing new programs, that money has to come from somewhere. So we aren't going to be creating any new social programs.
Great, thanks, Melissa. Suresh.
Okay. Yeah, so housing is a major issue all over Canada. We all know like 7,000 people are waiting for an affordable housing in our region. And I understand the waiting list is almost 8 years. So what are we going to do about this? Like, they are human beings. And I believe housing is a human right. So if the governments are denying the right to the citizen, that is something not correct. What we are planning to do is to build like 500,000 affordable houses in a matter of 10 years, which we hope will put a small dent on this issue. And then we are going to repair and retrofit another 1.2 million homes so that they can also be coming to the rental market. So that will again put another dent to this housing crisis. We are going to put like a 20% tax on the people who are not living in Canada, who are not Canadian citizens, who are not permanent residents, but just thought of buying a house as an investment. Housing is a human issue. It's not an investment opportunity like a stock market. Yes, it could have been an investment opportunity for so many people if everyone had a place to live. But that's not happening in Canada. So we have to stop these people investing in the houses just for making the profits. So the 20% tax, that's the first thing. Then we are going to make, the hands of the law enforcement agencies very strong to prevent the money laundering so that the unclean funds are not coming to the real estate market, which will stop the race to some extent. NDP is going to provide a $1,500 tax credit to the people who are buying the houses. So these are the things, and we are going to give an exemption for GST or HST on the people who are building affordable houses. So we believe that affordable housing crisis is creating homelessness, and homelessness is creating a big problem in the society. We are forgetting that we think that, housing is only one person's problem or 7,000 people problem. It is not. It is affecting our economy. It is affecting our country. So we have to find a solution, and NDP is ready to do that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Suresh. Okay, now we're going to go back to Prakash for the next question.
Okay, thank you. So my next question is about immigration. Immigration is and always has been the backbone of the Canadian economy. As a society, we simply don't replace ourselves fast enough or in great enough numbers to sustain our economic growth, let alone grow it. In 2019, Prime Minister promised 1.2 million immigrants over the following 3 years. In 2020, we had only 284,000 people that came here. And then in 2021, it's less than 50,000 so far. So business needed them before the pandemic. However, have found mechanisms like temporary foreign worker program to be very unfriendly to small and medium-sized businesses. And out of this 1.2 million, we already shot quite significant amount in the last 2 years. And we seem to have no problem getting students, but we are not getting skilled trades or entrepreneurs either to looking for job or creating job opportunities. How will your party help our economy grow and bring immigrants to Canada targeted to business positioned to grow? Thank you.
And we'll start with Melissa. Mute, 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 mute. We'll get you trained by the end of this. We'll get
One
you.
of these days, yes, one of these days I'll so basically we need to understand that we have to prioritize our economic interests. And especially right now, as we're in the situation that we're in financially, we have to start being a little bit more streamlined in our focus. So basically we want to make sure that we're lowering, well, we are going to lower the number of immigrants that we accept each year at this point from about 350,000 to between 100 and 150,000, depending on economic and other circumstances. We want to prioritize skilled workers. We want to get people here that are going to be able to open up and start small, medium-sized businesses. We know this creates jobs. We know this stimulates the economy. And we want to get, you know, this is the Canadian dream, right? We do want to make sure that we're being able to get people here to enjoy that life here and to have an overall positive effect on the rest of Canada, the rest of this, on Waterloo region in this case. So we do want to reform the immigration point system and the related programs to accept a larger proportion of economic immigrants with the right skills and accept fewer resettled refugees and limit the number of immigrants accepted under the family reunification program, including abolishing the program for parents and grandparents. We need the money to do this. And when you don't have the money, you can't spend the money. We, again, prioritizing things in terms of fiscal responsibility. We have to really crack down on this, especially now. We have Canadians here. There are lots of us that are, you know, again, looking for opportunities. We want to bring in people who are going to contribute to the economy. We want to limit the number of temporary foreign workers and make sure that they fulfill temporary positions and do not compete unfairly with Canadian workers. Although I do think at this point in time, you know, we are having a situation where we did touch on earlier that there are some people who that aren't going back to work. We want to, again, give these folks incentives to go back to work as well. I just want to make sure that I touch on that again. And then there are, you know, we want to ensure every candidate for immigration undergoes a face-to-face interview and answers a series of specific questions to the extent that we have ways of doing things in Canada. This is the focus, this is the priority. And we want to make sure that that's respected too when people come to Canada. Let's become a part of a better future for everybody.
Thanks, Melissa. Suresh.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So immigration is not, people are not immigrating, or Canada is not asking people to immigrate just for fun. There is you know, an aging population and low infertility rates, you know, which is forcing the governments to bring more immigrants. I have read like a report saying that, I don't remember the exact year, that there will be a shortage of 1.6 million people who is getting, you know, the shortage between the people getting out of the workforce and getting into the workforce. So we need people to work here. And how will that happen? The immigrants, the people who are immigrating to Canada, they should be given the opportunities so that more talented people will come. How will that happen? Their qualifications, you know, like the validation of the credential is a major thing for people coming to Canada and getting a good job. The other thing is we call about Canadian experience. How can people coming from outside have a Canadian experience? And because of the Canadian experience barrier, they are getting into lower level jobs. We know the doctors and, you know, the highly qualified people are coming to Canada and driving cabs. No, I respect every job, but their talents are wasted. So we have to provide them more support by validating the credential, and they have to be a way to get them into the good jobs by helping them to get over these barriers. That will help the business, that will help the small businesses, the economy, everyone together. The other thing is housing. They are finding it difficult to live here because of the housing prices going up every day. How are they going to live? They are coming here to make a good living. Now they are finding they don't have a place to live. They might be coming from countries where they are persecuted for their opinions or the religious belief. So we need to bring people to Canada because Canada is a civilized country. It's a great country, and we have to be the same to others. So bringing people to by bringing more immigrants to Canada will help our economy, will raise our status in the international world, and eventually everyone will be having, and the mix of cultures have always helped any nation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Suresh. Valerie.
Yes, Canada is a country built on immigration. It's always been that way, and it increasingly will be going forward. All those of you on the call today that are business owners, we've already addressed the severe skill shortage in our area and in Canada in general. And this has been exacerbated during the COVID crisis because we had to basically shut down our immigration program over the last 18 months. The country was closed. We were not processing and bringing in new immigrants. We're going to have a lot of catching up to do. We do have an immigration system that is the envy of the world because of the point system. We attract and approve immigrants that are bringing the skills that we need here that we're short of in Canada. That's why, we are so successful in attracting immigrants that we need. But once we get them here, we want them to be successful as quickly as possible. One of the hindrances of this is a lot of the professional colleges exist to protect their own members that are paying memberships, and they are reticent to approve new people coming into the workforce, even though we need that. So we really need to address that. We need to do everything we can to ensure that new immigrants are successful as quickly as possible. Through my work with the Waterloo Region Connectors program, I was able to meet with new immigrants that were coming in and introduce them to possibly up to 3 companies that are looking for their skill sets. Because as we all know, many jobs are never even advertised. You hear about it by word of mouth, but new immigrants are not connected in the community that way. So we could use people like me who have connections to give them a warm introduction to at least get them the interview. These are all things that can be done. Canada needs to welcome immigrants in the areas of professions that we need, and we need to accelerate the approval of their credentials. Maybe they need a little bit of internship or something, apprenticing to see how we do things in Canada, but their basic credentials and their training from abroad should be recognized so that they can work in their professions that they were practicing where they came from. So I'm committed to do this. I have experience in doing this, and it was one of the things that I enjoyed most about my job in economic development and with the Workforce Planning Board.
Great. Thanks, Valerie, very much. Now we'll go to the next question with Kristen. Kristen, put them on their heels a little bit, like give them a really tough one.
I'll try, Greg. Members of Parliament, as representatives of a political party, are bound to follow party lines and promote and support the will of the party's leadership. The will of your political party may at times be in conflict with the will of the people in the community that you represent. Could you please describe the advocacy or challenge process within your specific party should proposed policies or plans not be in the best interest of your constituents? Thank you.
And we'll start with Suresh.
Yes, as a New Democratic Party, we are very different because we are made of working people. All through our history, we have worked to make the lives of Canadians better by providing better working conditions and living conditions. So as far as we are concerned, when we are going to the Parliament, we don't have any conflict of interest because we don't report to the big corporations. We don't report to the big pharmaceutical companies. We don't report to any companies where, our like the working people, the average citizen of Canada's interest is compromised. So as far as we are concerned, we know even during this pandemic, we try to increase the CERB from the Canadians from $1,000 to $2,000. We were supporting the small businesses by increasing the CWS, the wage subsidy, which the Liberals was trying to give a 10% to 75%. So we always, in spite of a crisis, or even when we have only very less number of seats, we never have a conflict of interest. So we look into the communities. That's why we are offering affordable housing. That's why we are offering the pharma care, the dental care, and the mental health care to be included.
Suresh, I hate to do this, but I think you might have missed the context of the question. The question was when your party is in conflict with the interests of the people in your riding, or maybe even yourself, what process does your party have in place to allow your voice to excel within the confines of the decision-making process?
So that's what I was trying to say. If there is, first of all, there won't be a conflict of interest between us and constituents because we are representing them. So that things normally won't arise. But yes, a hypothetical situation, let's say our party has a conflict of interest. We are going to talk to our constituents and we are going to get their opinion and we are going to present that opinion in the parliament. So if we understand the people's will, and that's why we are elected to this position, right? So if we understand their position and we take up that matter and we try to explain, it's not like, it's like it's not a boxing match. It's like a compromise. So we listen to the people's requirement. We explain to the people, okay, this is the rational way of approaching it. And then we will take up to the parliament. So at the end, I don't think there is any conflict of interest, but if there is, we will resolve it.
Thank you. Valerie.
I firmly believe that the job of an MP is to serve and represent the public interests of the public that elect you to office. And I would take that responsibility very, very seriously. The Liberal Party has a caucus system where we have weekly caucus meetings, which allows the MPs to bring forward the concerns and what they're hearing in their communities. Canada is a very, very diverse country, and the issues of concern vary widely from one end of the country to the other. But it's in caucus where we can hear these concerns and then come up with national policies that are in the interest of all Canadians. And so once it's a very collaborative and open process, and that's what I like about the Liberal Party. So based on this collaboration, they do come up with a position that then becomes the policy of the government. So I guarantee that I will work very, very hard as our MP to represent the interests and what I hear from the residents of Kitchener, South-Hespeler, and the business community here as well.
Thank you very much. Melissa.
I remembered this time.
That a girl.
I understand that I'm the new kid here, but I do want to say that I want to take a completely different approach to this, or a much more different approach to this. I really want to get very personally involved with having conversations and sit downs and meetings. I want to really hear what the people want and what they have to say. If there is a conflict, I think that it would be easy enough to approach. I would have no problems approaching the party to speak about it. We're really open in that way, and no one's closed-minded about things. I think that being present and involved in the community and with the businesses, I think is something that's going to be very important, especially with being able to present new ideas and with being able to support and bring ideas to the table when we will actually in this party be able to present individual bills. So there are opportunities there. I think that a new approach is probably a really good thing at this point in time, especially given the fact that we basically are going to be building in a sense from the ground up, and where businesses are concerned, we need to make sure that voices are included. If I had a conflict of interest, I wouldn't feel uncomfortable whatsoever addressing it, and I'll push for the people in this riding. Absolutely. That's as an MP, that would be my job.
Thanks very much, Melissa. I maybe before I move to Peter, I just, maybe bring some context to that question, because sometimes it's maybe, I guess, a little difficult to understand. But I think from our perspective, and Kristen and I and our board have had a lot of discussion about this, it's that, in our system, it creates an opportunity where the power is at the top, and it really mitigates the voice at the constituent level. And I think, from our perspective, you folks are all newbies. One of you are likely going to be the MP in the next government. And it's always great when new people go in there and say, hey, this isn't the way it should work. And my constituency says my voice needs to be a little bit stronger in the decision-making process. So it's kind of all about that. We can't change our system because we're in the British, parliamentary system, but we can make it better. And I think that's kind of the thrust of where Kristen's question was. But let's go on to Peter Voss for the next question.
Back actually to a point that you made, Greg, at the start of the call here, that the small business community in Canada actually represents 99% of all businesses. And sometimes we feel like we're not being listened to or heard. Personally, I haven't heard from the incumbent in my riding in 6 years, and I just have no real way of communicating. I just felt very shut out. So if you are elected, how will you improve that communication with the small business community and bring some of those issues forward to your party?
Valerie.
I believe it's very important to hear from small businesses. As you may be aware, I have worked in economic development locally for the past 15 years. I've been very connected with the business community. So I believe in having roundtables and regular meetings and hear what their concerns are. My door would always be open. If you had a concern, I would welcome to hear it. You can address problems if you're not aware of them. I know that businesses are the cornerstone of our community. They give back so much, particularly small businesses. That's why I was so concerned that they seem to be unfairly targeted with the shutdowns, that they weren't able to continue to operate when, say, the large big box stores were. So I would always be available. I would welcome regular meetings with certain sectors or small business in general. I think there's a great role for the chamber to play, to be the channel of the voice of their local business community, working as well with business improvement associations. All of these things are ways that we can stay in touch regularly to make sure that we have the ear of the business community and are reflecting what we hear.
Thanks, Valerie, very much. Melissa.
All right.
Joy, you got the hang of that now perfectly.
So I think that this is probably one of the most important things that we do need to make sure we're focused on, because I'm a small business owner myself, and I have definitely felt the pinch, especially in the last year and a half, because of everything that's happened. I too felt incredibly left behind and frustrated. So I absolutely understand how people feel, because when you're watching the big corporate stores be allowed to be open during COVID, but yet all the mom and pop shops and all of small businesses who are doing everything to the letter to meet the COVID requirements were just being left behind. And I know so many people too that have lost their livelihoods. It's been a really difficult time. The communication really needs to take place, I think, directly. I think that is something, as I look forward to what this role is going to be. I want to be in direct contact with small businesses and medium-sized businesses. I want to have these conversations, and I want to bring the concerns directly forward. I think that there seems to be such a disconnect, like he was saying before. A lot of people have said the same thing to me as I've made my way around to speak with small business owners, medium-sized business owners, and just constituents in general. That disconnect between the MPs and the constituents, this is something that this isn't going to bring us forward at all. And it's something that seems to be, this is a recurring theme that I've been hearing. For myself, that's not something that I would want to even, I want to take a completely different direction with that and be directly involved.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's Suresh.
Yep. So basically, Chamber of Commerce is a major factor in any economy, and I was a member of Waterloo Chamber of Commerce for some time, and I saw what kind of discussions happening there. I have not been in Chamber of Commerce in Cambridge, but I believe Chamber of Commerce is a major thing, for people to be, the politicians to be interacting so that they understand the problem of the small businesses. But having said that, that's not the only way. I will keep my door open for the small businessman or the small businesswoman to come and talk to me about their problem, right? Like Chamber is a formalized setting, but when they talk and come and talk to me personally, I can understand their problem. And I never will understand why the small businesses was closed down when big corporations like Walmart, like Amazon, were all making money. They became $75 billion richer when the small businesses close down. So I believe as an MP, I will never agree to the small business being closed down in any pandemic or any crisis. God forbid, it should not happen. But if it happens, we should not be. Supporting the small businesses is by providing them all kind of support. Like, as I said, we have to talk to them. They're having billions of dollars in debts now. And the 80% of the small businesses, which I read a report, like having 20 or more people cannot afford any debt. So what are we going to do about them? They cannot grow. If they cannot afford any more money and they have to live. So we have to talk to the small businesses, as I said, during the chamber and in-person meetings, and also understand their problem and then work. And that's what I will be doing if I'm elected as an MP, because I believe small businesses is the engine of creation of the jobs in Canada, and we have to support them.
Thanks very much, Suresh. And you have absolutely no idea what you've been missing by not participating with the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce.
I know.
It's like this is the center of the universe. You know that, right?
I know.
Yes, I know.
But I have been with Waterloo Chamber of
Yeah.
Commerce. And
Yeah. But this is the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce.
I understand. But I will try to get involved with you after I become the MP on a different level.
Okay, the next question goes to Prakash.
Okay, thank you. The next question is on environment. We have long been talking about climate change and its devastating impact on the future. We are still talking. Obviously, we cannot control the natural evolution of climate change, but we can control human contribution. What is interesting is few, if any, countries in the world have met their climate targets. Some parties in this election have extremely lofty goals and objectives that have a real impact on business. How will your party balance the environment and economy with your plan? Thank you.
Melissa, we'll start with you. You're on mute. That's okay. I didn't start the timing, so you still got 2 minutes, so we can hear you.
There we go. There we go. So I think that we do all need to be, as a community, as a riding, especially, too, in the business community, we should all be doing our best to make our own steps towards positive change. But I think we also need to make sure that as a country, we're looking at this from a realistic and logical perspective. So this isn't to say that we don't take responsibility, but I think we really need to cool out on the amount of alarmism that we have here, because we account globally for about 1 to 1.5% of emissions. So we can always do better, and we should always strive to do better. We need to take measured steps towards doing that. And we also need to make sure that we're not approaching this from a place of fear and alarmism. I think that that's not going to benefit anyone. I think it would be a really great idea for, like the chamber, for example, just getting everybody together to see what we could do to discuss what kinds of things we can do collectively going forward, because people have a lot of great ideas and there are a lot of great solutions that could be implemented, and we can do that at that level. So I think that we need to always remember Canada's place in this, and just remember that it doesn't mean we get to sit back and do nothing, but we don't have to approach this from a place of, oh my God, we're the cause of, we can do better and we need to do better. But we also need to make sure that we're being realistic in our approach to that. And let's do it at the community level, because I think we can make a big difference if we take that approach rather than a top-down enforcement or taxing people like crazy for something that, frankly, we don't really make that big of a contribution to on a global scale. So again, it's just a kind of common sense, realistic approach to the issue, but let's do it at the community level. Canada's a great leader when it comes to, a lot of environmental initiatives. Let's push that forward, and we can do that at the grassroots or community level.
Thanks, Melissa. Suresh.
Yeah, climate crisis is a reality, as we know, and there is no doubt about it. And if we think about Canada only, Yeah, you should remember that, out of the 800 sudden deaths in BC this summer, 600 people is because of excessive heat. And wildfires was raging in BC and people are losing their homes. So if we think that there is time to wait, that's absolute foolishness. We cannot wait anymore. So what can we do about this? The first thing NDP is planning to do is to make sure that we are retrofitting the houses in various communities so that is energy efficient. That is going to put billions of dollars in the economy, in the regional communities, so that the businesses can benefit from that. So moving away from the fossil fuel is not killing the small businesses. We are going to put more money in the smaller communities, in the regions like Waterloo region, and so that small businesses will get involved in this retrofitting and related business, so they have more things. We are moving into a green economy. We cannot. And as you know, 430,000 jobs was created because of this green economy. More jobs will be created in the coming years. And the businesses, we are going to support the businesses who is having this green economy initiative. We are going to buy, the federal government is going to buy from the businesses who is supporting the green economy. We are going to provide training and retraining for the existing employees and the coming employees so that they are suitable for the green economy. That's nothing against business. It is about saving our environment and it is about saving our future generation. Let us move away from the fossil fuel. We are not going to give these subsidies for helping the fossil fuel companies. We can put that money in our communities so that small businesses can be helped. So we have to stop thinking that, oh, fossil fuel company is inevitable. No, it is not. It's only a fuel. We can find alternative energy, even hydrogen fuel cells is going to be a big thing. I don't know whether anyone knows, like we have 1,200 buses and other things running in Europe with the hydrogen fuel cell, which have been made in Canada. So Canada can do it. If we move into the green economy and we have a will, we can make the next generation, the environment better for them to have a sustainable life. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Suresh. Valerie.
Let me start by saying that we don't have to decide between growing the economy and tackling climate change. They go hand in hand. The Liberal plan is the only plan that ties our environmental efforts to creating good, sustainable jobs. We're focused on helping businesses and workers make the transition to a zero emissions future. We're working directly with each carbon intensive industry because each industry is facing specific challenges. For example, we've cut taxes in half for businesses that manufacture zero emissions products. We've launched a net zero accelerator fund to help some of our largest emitters transition off fossil fuels. I've spent my career working with the businesses in our community, so I understand their needs and their challenges, and I will be a strong advocate on their behalf. Delivering on our commitment to meet and exceed our 2030 emissions reductions target, making us the first federal government in Canadian history to set a climate goal and meet it. We've ensured that pollution isn't free anywhere in the country while putting more money in the pockets of hardworking families through the Climate Action Incentive Rebate, which will be delivered quarterly starting in 2022. We're banning harmful single-use plastics in the short term. And I mean things like plastic bags, plastic straws, and those little microbeads that get in our fish and our water system, as we take action to eliminate the plastic waste completely by 2030 by making producers responsible for their waste and working with partners to increase recycling rates. So this is not imposing targets on businesses. This is working with them to develop solutions in a collaborative way. So we need to continue strong action on climate, but do it collaboratively with the business community and Canadians. That's how we're going to reach our targets. And that's how we're going to do it all together.
Thanks very much, Valerie. And we go to Kristen for the next question.
Thanks, Greg. Every party other than the governing party suggests that the way the pandemic has been handled by the government in power was wrong. What was wrong? What would your party have done differently? Thanks.
Suresh.
Sorry, Greg, the question was not clear. Can I hear that again, please?
Sure, you can. Many times as you want.
Every party other than the governing party suggests that the way the pandemic has been handled by the government in power was wrong. What was wrong, and what would your party have done differently?
So basically, one of the major issues during this pandemic was the closing down of small businesses. So when the big companies like, Walmart, like, Amazon, they were all surviving and making billions of dollars in profit, small businesses were closed. Why did this happen? That's a big failure on the government. When they talk about supporting the small businesses, they completely forgot the small businesses. The same precautions which would have been happening in the big box stores or Amazon kind of companies could have been implemented in the small businesses, which they didn't do. And the other thing, almost 50% of the total deaths of the Canadian citizens due to the pandemic happened in long-term care homes. They didn't do anything to rectify that. Yeah, they sent the army at the end. Is that what they should be doing? No, they should have done that because we have to save the lives. But I'm talking about, why is this happening? They never looked into the real cause. They're addressing the symptoms. They're not addressing the cause. Why this happened? It's because of the profit greed in the long-term care homes. They didn't address that. Instead of that, they provided more money for the private long-term care homes to spend. So we will not be doing this. When we are coming into power, the first thing we are planning to do is to take away the long-term care homes from the for-profit sector. We will never happen the small businesses to be closed down in any other crisis. As I said before, God forbid that should not happen. But if a crisis happens again, we will be supporting the small businesses. The Liberal Party was planning to give 10% wage subsidy to the small businesses. We made it 75%. So that is, we understand the small businesses problem. They were trying to give $1,000 as the CERB to the people. Who can live with $1,000? And we made it happen to $2,000. Liberal Party and the Conservative Party always talk about supporting the people. I'm thankful. Conservatives don't talk about helping the people. They normally talk about supporting the big corporations. But we are for the people, and we have done a lot during the pandemic, and we will continue doing. We will be fighting for you even after the pandemic. Thank you.
Thanks, Suresh. Valerie.
When we look at how the pandemic was handled, I think it's important that we address who was responsible for what. And some of the things that Suresh has just referred to were clearly provincial responsibilities, such as the decisions with respect to business closures, who got closed and who didn't, and the long-term care homes fall under the purview of the provincial governments. Based on what happened during the pandemic, as I've addressed before, we do need some national standards, but we currently did not have them at the time. So looking at the federal government's responsibilities, the Liberal government worked very hard to have the backs of Canadians during the pandemic. We secured up to 409 million doses of vaccines, safe and effective vaccines, to ensure that every Canadian that wanted a vaccine was able to get 2 doses. And now Canada has the highest vaccination rate in the world. This is a remarkable accomplishment, given that a previous government sold off laboratories, privatized it, took it out of the public realm, and then it got sold off. And we did not have the capability of manufacturing mRNA vaccines domestically. So we were at a disadvantage. But as I say, it's not where you start the race, it's where you finish. And now we are on top with the highest vaccination rate. We created the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit and the wage subsidy to help Canadians make ends meet and help businesses stay afloat. So not only did the federal government make sure that we were safe from a health perspective, we provided the financial emergency support so that businesses and families could weather the COVID storm. If we had not done that, everyone would have lost their homes, businesses would have gone bankrupt. It would have been a lot longer recovery period. And we provided the critical funding to improve ventilation in schools and long-term care facilities. Many Canadians don't realize that for every dollar that was spent to fight COVID nationally, 80 cents of that came from the federal government. That's one reason we were able to address a lot of these very critical problems. The global health crisis has underscored the need to keep Canada at the cutting edge of health technology innovation to provide the best care to individuals while helping to drive the economy's strong comeback. The federal government has invested $10 million to develop, excuse me, a leading edge health technology hub here in the Waterloo, London region. And that'll support 135 businesses and create 730 jobs with a dynamic innovation ecosystem.
Thanks,
World-class.
Valerie.
Am I finished?
Yes, you are.
Oh, okay. But anyway,
Okay.
I think the federal government has done a yeoman's job and has the right to continue to take us forward, not backwards.
Okay, Melissa.
Okay, from our perspective, federally and provincially, this COVID response has been a complete failure. While putting this country well over $1 trillion into debt, we have also crushed small and medium-sized businesses and sent the economy into a situation where the effects of the lockdowns and the COVID response have been far more detrimental than COVID itself. And this is something that we would take a completely different approach to. First of all, as I'm sitting here talking to everybody right now, the first thing that I will fight for is to get small businesses and medium-sized businesses open and keep their doors open. I will fight tooth and nail to make sure that they do not experience these kind of shutdowns again. Absolutely not. That it is nonsensical. I also think that as we go forward, we need to make sure that we're not cutting the opportunities of businesses short by forcing them to police their patrons and their clients with mandated vaccinations, et cetera, et cetera. This is not the job of small business owners. And this is something that is going to have a potential negative impact on revenues. This is not also, it's also, if we're being honest, and this might be just a personal embellishment, but it's a very un-Canadian thing to do, to divide our society like that. So, and this of course will have long-standing effects on small and medium-sized businesses. What we would have done differently is certainly not punish the small and medium-sized businesses by shutting them down. Like I said, this affected myself very negatively and so many people I know very negatively. The amount of people I know that have lost everything it is simply unacceptable. And for people who are also, you know, in a position where they've made it by, they're making it by, why should that? And a lot of that is through government loans. So these business owners are now dependent on the government, and now they have to pay the government back tens of thousands of dollars. This is not an effective strategy. So let's get these businesses open. Let's keep them open and work forward from this point with a completely different approach to how we deal with this.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank
Peter, do you have a question that will generate a short answer? Oh, you're muted. Because I want to give them time to do their 1 minute spiel at the end. So if you've got a question that should be a short answer, all of our questions should derive a short answer. Yes, yes, and yes. Go ahead.
Hopefully this is a yes or no answer, yes or no question. So, you know, taxes are actually a regressive penalty, meaning that the more successful somebody is or business is, the more in taxes they have to pay. Even the rate increases as you become more successful. So for over 6 years now, the Canadian Chamber has been calling the federal government to initiate a royal commission to revisit and rewrite Canada's tax code. You know, the original tax code was only 10 pages long. I realized that was a long time ago, but today it's almost 3,300 pages, right? As a CPA myself, you know, I had to learn a lot of that, and it was next to impossible to understand the tax code. So instead of trying to fix this problem, make it more fair and more understandable to the taxpayers and businesses, you know, the current government just hired thousands more auditors to enforce, you know, the very convoluted tax code. And so it's very unfair to the, you know, the taxpayers and to the Canadian businesses that, you know, they have to hire a lot of people to help them understand the code. It's very, very expensive, a lot of red tape. So my question is, you know, if you get elected, would you or your party fight to get this very confusing document before a royal commission to untangle it and to actually rewrite it to make it a much more fair and approachable tax law? for Canadians.
Valerie.
I agree that the tax code is extremely convoluted, and that's what keeps accountants in business. But since 2015, the Liberal government has made sure that Canada has the lowest combined small business tax rate in the G7. And I really think that what Canadians want is fairness in their tax situation. And the Liberal government has been very friendly to the business community. However, like I say, Canadians have a sense of fairness and want to ensure that everyone pays their fair share. So we will work really hard with our international partners to implement a global minimum tax so that the biggest companies in the world are not able to escape the taxes that they owe here in Canada. And we'll raise the corporate income taxes on the largest, most profitable banks and insurance companies who earn more than $1 billion a year. They did very well. Actually, they were one of the sectors that did well during COVID because they had huge loan loss provisions because they thought that businesses would fail and people would default on their mortgages and car loans. And that didn't happen thanks to the economic supports that the government very quickly got in people's bank accounts. But anyway, we are committed to making sure that everyone pays their fair share, including the big banks and the wealthiness among us.
Thanks, Valerie. Melissa. You're muted still. Thank you for muting yourself though, so that, you know, that's good though.
Okay, well, with regards to the specifics of that question, I would just say this. Yeah, it's certainly not light reading. And if you ever have a problem falling asleep, I suggest pulling it out. What I would do is, Max actually has a background in this. So if this is something that people would want to have looked at which I can understand why they would, let's bring it forward. And yeah, absolutely. I'd be more than happy to present that and bring that concern forward and do something about it. It's a short answer, but that's the answer. Yeah, let's do it. I'm all for it.
Well, it's the right answer, but that's just a personal bias. Suresh.
I agree. Any law which is made in any country should be for the citizens to understand it, not to confuse them. So tax laws, I'm a professional accountant, so I know the tax laws. We can understand the tax law because we learned it, but for a common folk, it is very different for that person to understand. And as Valerie said, they have to depend upon accountants, which gives them a job. So we are supporting one part of the economy by making it complicated for the common folk, which I don't agree, because people have to understand. But the thing is that any taxation should be helping the economy and the country, and the money should be invested for the welfare of the people. Like when the Liberal Party has been telling about charging the banks and insurance companies, what about Amazon? What about Walmart? What about Netflix? What about the big gasoline companies? What happened to them? Did you conveniently forget them, or just trying to put a picture? Oh, we are charging the banks. So the idea is not to tax the real people. And what about the money which has been invested offshore? What action are you doing to bring them back? I understand the CRA is not being supported so that they can bring the money back. They don't have the teeth to take care of these things. So I agree, the taxation, the tax law should be very easy for people to understand, but that should not be very easy for the big corporations to get away with that also. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Suresh. Thank you, all three of you. As Peter eloquently pointed out, the original tax code was 10 pages. Now it's pretty near 3,300 pages. Because it's all filled with amendments and changes and diversions and shelters and all kinds of things have been built into it, which, as Peter said, being an accountant himself, it oftentimes you actually need to specialize in the tax code if you're an accountant, because most accountants can't find their way through the 3,300 pages. So all Perrin Beatty from the Canadian Chamber was really saying was it's time now for a royal commission to sit down and undress it and basically scrap it and use the elements of the current tax code, but develop a fair and equitable tax code that's easy to understand, easy to read, and easy to implement. Most governments in the last number of terms have their finance ministers have said, not on my watch, because it's a big job for a finance minister, a huge job, maybe the biggest job they'd ever do, and they don't want to do it. So when I'm paying $174,000 a year for an individual to do a job plus a minister's pay, I think they should do what I tell them to do. And I think we want them to make changes that are fair and equitable. I'm going to give you folks the opportunity, the last moment or two here. Give us your 1-minute spiel why a resident of Kitchener South-Hespeler should make you their next MP. Melissa, let's start with you.
Okay, well, 1 minute, bullet points, let's go. I am a resident here in Kitchener South-Hespeler. I grew up in this riding. I know it very well. I care very much about the people and the businesses in this riding and what's going to be going on in the future because of what's especially been happening in the last little while. I do want to say we're a business-minded party. We care about people, but we want to make sure we're doing things with fiscal responsibility in mind and that we're also giving people opportunities. Instead, we want to create and present opportunities rather than just using the short-term solution. The money has to come from somewhere, and we always have that in the back of our minds when it comes to moving forward with things. Definitely, it is really important to me to be able to help businesses in this riding keep their doors open, have them open now and keep them open from this point going forward. This is a really special riding too, and I recognize that. Kitchener South and Hespeler, you know, I've been spending time in both areas. We need to make sure to, you know, going forward, I would make sure that I'm spending the appropriate amount of time in both parts of the riding. So that's another thing too that I would want to make sure happens. And I think that, you know, maybe it's time for a really big change, and I'm ready to bring that forward.
Thanks, Melissa. Suresh.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Suresh Rangat. I'm running as a federal candidate of New Democratic Party from Kitchener South-Hespeler. On September 20, you have a choice between the people who have broken promises, like the Conservatives and the Liberal, time and time again, or to elect Jagmeet Singh and NDP, who is fighting for you. During the last 18 months, we have learned that Canadians can confront any situation if they want to, if they choose to, and if they are together. The last 18 months also has shown that a lot of the public services which we rely on is not there anymore, because thanks to the cuts provided by the Liberals and the Conservative under the guise of balancing the books. So we, the NDP, are very different. We are the working people. All through our history, we have worked for the working people and the average folks in the country, in Canada, to make their lives better by making the working conditions better, the living conditions better. So in this coming election, that's the only day your voice will be heard by the Conservatives or the Liberals, and your choice will be heard. So please use this opportunity and support the New Democratic Party, who is fighting for you, and we will continue our fight forever. Thank you.
Thanks, Suresh. Valerie.
It was such a pleasure to have the opportunity to meet with you today. As an economic development professional, I've spent the last 15 years working with local municipalities, supporting our manufacturing sector, still the largest employer of our workforce, with approximately 18% of our population employed directly in manufacturing, much of which takes place here in our riding of Kitchener South-Hespeler. I also focused on bringing jobs and investment to our community and helping our existing businesses grow and access government programs. This has provided me with a thorough understanding of the local economy. Until June of this year, I served as the chair of the Workforce Planning Board of Waterloo, Wellington, and Dufferin. One of the things we focused on was retooling people for the jobs of the future if they became displaced from their current employment. As we build back our economy locally and nationally from the COVID-induced recession, these are areas that we will need to focus on, and we will require all three levels of government working together. I am well connected to the local municipal leadership, and I'm excited for the opportunity to continue my public service now as our MP and utilize my 15 years of experience in supporting the business community and building our local economy. Growing up on a farm, I learned at an early age the value of hard work and seeing a job through to completion. I believe the Liberal government has done an excellent job in keeping Canadians safe as we battle through this COVID pandemic, ensuring we had a safe vaccine supply for all Canadians and providing supports for families
Thanks,
and businesses
Valerie. That's
as
your
we weather
time.
the COVID storm. That's why I'm asking for your support on September 20th to elect me as your MP and be a strong voice for Kitchener, South-Hespeler, and Ottawa.
Thanks very much certainly, first of all, to my three board members, Kristen, Peter, and Prakash, for coming here and asking questions and keeping the candidates on their toes. I also want to especially thank the three candidates that did come, the only ones that actually wanted to appear with the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce, Melissa from the PPC, Suresh from the NDP, and of course, Valerie from the Liberal Party. Thank you very much. And I want to apologize to everybody for Greg expressing his opinions on some of the policies and questions that were there. But as my wife always says, don't give Greg an issue to think about because he'll always have an opinion about it. So, but that's what we all have. And good luck to the three of you. Have a great election day. Enjoy yourself. Because it'll either be a real high going forward after the 20th or a real low. But you know what? The chamber's always going to be here for you. You can participate and bring your issues to us, and we'll help navigate through the myriad of pages of the tax code as well as all the other legislative bureaucracy as well, and try and keep business humming right here in the region of Waterloo. Thanks very much, folks. Have an awesome day. Go out and make some money.